Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Maybe I'm Just Not Getting It. I'm your podcast host, Robert Davis. Appreciate you all for tuning in to this episode. Before we start, just want to take a quick second to plug myself. Follow me on Instagram, uh, username RTD underscore III. Follow me on Facebook as well, Robert Trey Davis III. I post, videos, reels, and stuff like that related to the podcast on there. The podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. So definitely follow on those platforms. If you listen to it on any different platform, just let me know and I'll try to get it on there as well. With that being said, we'll kind of jump into today's episode. And so in today's episode, kind of wanted to talk about a topic we hear a lot of kind of conversation around, and it's whether people are soft nowadays. And, I thought to myself, and who better to talk about this than somebody that I have a lot of philosophical conversations with, my boy Ian. So give you a second welcome to the show, give you a second to plug yourself and everything.
What's up? What's up? My name is Ian Wilson, aka Charlie Markers. You can find me on Instagram primarily at Charlie Markers. It's Charlie, as in Charlie Brown Markers, as in stuff you draw on the walls with. I'm also on Twitter and Threads, but not as much as I should be. And yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, no problem, man. And so, like, to start, I think the kind of intro into it, like when we talk about like are people soft, like we hear this often in the world. Like we hear it about like kids, like, oh, the kids today are soft. We hear it in like comedians say a lot, oh, the world is soft. We can't handle a joke. We can't talk about sensitive subjects. We talk about like sports and stuff, like, oh, they don't play as hard as they used to, or they shy away from contact and everything is soft. So I think, just in terms of that, like the start, I think just to based on where this is coming from, I think we hear a lot about that in the world today in terms of just where society has kind of come from. And I just wanted to kind of get, like, have you seen, or what's your take on that?
Um, I think I would answer the question by saying yes. Yes, people are soft, but you know me, but the audience might not know me. I'm very much a give people their grace kind of person. And so I wouldn't say that people are soft by their own will or by their own making. I
Right.
feel like we're not as exposed to adversity as previous generations were, and it's not as much as we think that we are. You know, as we were prepared for this, I was thinking about the common statement about like the number of world events that our generation, quote unquote, has gone through. And, people say like, oh man, we done dealt with 9/11 and COVID and two Trump presidencies. I'm tired of dealing with world history, which is a valid way to feel.
Yeah.
COVID, I think, is its own thing I could touch on later. But as far as all of the events that we have experienced, our direct involvement is very limited compared to, say, like the Cold War or like actual world wars.
Shanty
You
towns
know,
and all that Great Depression type stuff.
exactly. Like folks was literally in the streets fighting over bread. Like, we don't talk to our elders enough. Like my grandma's always telling stories about having to can her own food. Like that's real adversity versus people now don't even know where food comes from in a way.
Yeah.
So, I feel like the answer is yes, people are soft, and it's because what we think is tough isn't really tough compared to what other people have dealt with.
I think you bring up a good point because, like, I think softness, in terms of how people look at it, it comes from two different sources. I think one half of it is people are soft in the way that we're describing it, like an inability to deal with adversity or inability to deal with a hard time, I think is one level of soft. I think the other half of it is that I think we've seen, I think we've seen also kind of over it's I don't want to say being empathetic because I don't think having empathy makes you soft. But I think when you see people, I think I don't want like when you see like let's say like right wing people and it's like, oh, all this woke stuff is soft. And I think to a degree what they're saying is like an overextension of it. Like if you're overly empathetic or if you're like overly bleeding heart to everybody, then that's kind of like, oh, you're soft as well. And I think
Yeah.
those are two different ways of I mean, I think they kind of come to the same thing because like if you have an inability to deal with stuff, it's like an inability uh to deal with a hard time, then yeah, that's soft as well. And I think it's just two different ways of kind of looking at it because I think we've seen examples of like people being upset with like empathy and care. And I think like it's weird because like I can say societally, like, oh yeah, like we can say, oh, people are soft because like, oh, if their favorite TV show gets canceled, then they're on the internet crying and bitching about it. Like that's one half of and then we can say like some people will say, oh well, like a country is soft because or like we as a nation is soft because we don't want to like deport certain people, but we want to fight for people. Like I see it in different, it's not like a different thing, but I see it in different elements of like our
Hmm.
society today. Like I see what we talk about it like government, I see what we talk about it like in just regular culture with people. I see what we talk about like in parenting. And like it's just interesting, quite honestly, that it's comes in so many different forms.
Because it's about exposure, right? Like what are you exposed to that makes you feel as if someone else's experiences are or are not valid, right?
Yeah.
So like if you talk about empathy, I think about like a homeless situation. We see homeless people, almost every single person deals with a homeless person in some capacity once a week, right?
Right.
Whether it be someone asking you for money, panhandling, or whatever, right? And because you're exposed to it so much, you don't have the empathy anymore, right? And some people will look at that person dealing with that and say that maybe that they're soft because they didn't do X, Y, and Z to prevent their situation, right?
Yeah.
And so some people look at it in that aspect. And then you got other people that'll say, so many of these folks are scammers that now I have zero empathy. And therefore, I'm not like, going to give them any money or anything, right? So my point being is like, because of we're overexposed respectfully to their humanity, but because we're like overexposed with dealing with a person who is unhoused, it makes you judge them in a way in which it really has no bearing on you. And I
Yeah.
feel like softness is a lot like related to that. Like the more you're overexposed or underexposed to something, you don't recognize what kind of bearing it actually has on other people's situation. And it makes it hard to be empathetic. Same
Yeah.
with like, like TV. We're so exposed to like violence and all types of things because of media, really, not just TV, that when someone actually is dealing with something that is challenging, you don't really feel any kind of way because you see someone deal with that same type of situation in a 30-minute TV show and then they get over it. And so you feel like it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Kind of a weird way to look at it, but I just feel like people are so encapsulated with themselves that they don't recognize what really matters and therefore what actually is a challenge or is not a challenge.
Yeah.
It's
No, man, I
trying
think
to
you're
think.
right. I think it's one of those things where you kind of sometimes have to step back and look at like where you are in life and like what matters and what people are going through and what you're going through and be like, all right. Like sometimes you just really have to be like, all right, this shit ain't really it. Like this is
It's
not
it's
really
not.
it. Like,
It's not
like,
that deep, And like my dad used to always tell me to watch out for like giving people money, right? Because he had been exposed to so many people that weren't actually, I guess, in a disadvantaged situation that he no longer had that empathy. And it's so fascinating to me because not for him, but like then when people then will look at a homeless person and be like, "You're soft because you didn't do the things that would have prevented you from being in the situation." It's like they're dealing with something that's literally harder than anything you're dealing with.
Right.
But to you, because you felt like if it were me, I wouldn't have done this because I'm a tough guy. Like it only takes one moment, one bad fire or flood or like one exposure to drugs, and then it's like I don't know. It's like we're detached from reality almost
Mhm.
in a way because we have so much convenience. Also, I think is part of the problem. And when everything is so easily handed to you, it's hard for you to just be like, imagine if I had to work for this.
I think you bring a good point because I think people are so, I think to a point, you're right. We've been desensitized to, I think, people in on tough times or people going through things. And because so many people are, and so many people attack it, not attack it, but look at it from a concept of something you must have done something wrong, or this must be a, or you might be a scammer, or you're doing, or you're trying to get by, or you're not doing everything that you can. And
Right.
I think that to your point where it's like that, and I get it, to a certain, I do understand it, and it's like that if you don't is if I would if like let's say somebody beside me and a random person saw a homeless person, they was like, oh well yeah, you're homeless for a reason. You're obviously not working hard enough, and no, I'm not giving you anything or anything like that. And I said, oh, you know what? I'll give you $2 or something like that. They might look at me and say, oh, well, dang, you soft as hell. Like, I mean, in terms of because
Like
you
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 you fell for
like
the
you're a
trap.
bleeding heart. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think part of the weird thing is that because we had kind of like a movement of like that empathy for people. Like of all, of all everybody, the movement, everybody wanted to be, felt and seen and all sort of stuff. And I think that over kind of push of empathy did kind of create that feeling of people thinking like the world is soft. Like even that itself became an example of like the world is soft to a degree. It's just interesting to see different examples of just what people define being soft, quite honestly.
It honestly feels like it's in every single circumstance that exists these days. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like you brought up when we had talked about it previously, you brought up like comment sections on the internet. You talk about how people deal with being talked to in real life,
Yeah.
how people respond to um like losing in a video game or even like sports and like you know because we had talked about how Paul George said he didn't want to go to the Hornets because he felt like they didn't have a winning culture.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, I was like, that's soft because you're afraid to build the challenge. You're afraid to face the challenge to make the thing as opposed to just going somewhere where
Mhm.
the thing already exists. And that's how people approach everything. Like I don't want to
Yes.
do the hard thing. I'd rather do the easy thing because everything is the easy thing. We don't
Yeah.
have to grow our own food anymore. We barely have to cook our own food anymore. We don't have to like come up with the recipes off the top of our heads. Like the
Convenience has made
thing
it. Yeah. That
it's
convenience has
made
made us soft.
everything
Yeah.
easy. Like real soft, real soft to the point where then once we have a little bit of a challenge, then it's like you shut down because you've never experienced this in it before, and therefore
Yeah.
you don't know how to think creatively to solve the problem. Like imagine trying to figure out how to cook the first meal. It was people out here eating raw cow or
Yeah.
something,
First
and
time they
someone was
had
like,
fire, that was like that must have been God for them. They was like, yo, this cooked the meat. Okay.
this is what's up. And then someone was like, hey, have you heard about salt?
Yeah. And
Let's
then
throw, let's
yeah.
throw a little salt on this
And then
mug.
piece by piece, yeah.
You just start sprinkling it together. And I've been reading a lot about like the problem with not having enough time by yourself to just think about things, to think in that way. Like
Yeah.
we're at a point now where we don't have to think about anything.
Yeah.
It's just
We definitely
all
are.
given to us.
And like I think we definitely are. You bring up a lot of points that kind of bring me into my next section of it, like why this all matters. Like I think the reason why this concept of are we soft, like why it matters is like at first I think like to the point that we started on, life in the world is tough. Like
Hmm.
there's nobody that comes through life, even the rich have problems. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's nobody that
Right.
comes through life and just like, oh yeah, shit's good. Just happy go lucky every day. Like, oh yeah, everything's great for me. And I think, that won't change. So I think if we are in this concept of like, if we aren't prepared to really face the challenges of life and look at them realistically, like have empathy for each other, but not be completely like bleeding hearts for each other. Like, like if we're not able to like
Hmm.
really live realistically, like that's going to be a problem. And like, I don't know to a point that we were talking about earlier, just on mindset, if people are mentally strong enough to endure a lot of the hardships that they feel like they are facing or going to face. Like I mean, I know some people are like people are facing stuff. I don't want to belittle that, but I don't know if people really are mentally tough enough to face a lot of the shit that they are saying, at least that they say they're going to face or that they are going to see in the future. Like,
Yeah, I don't think that they are either, but I also believe that it's a matter of being put in that situation. Very rarely are we like nowadays you have to choose to face adversity in a way.
yeah,
Unless, God forbid something beyond your control then happens, right? So my point being is I feel like most people aren't able to deal with that right now, but I think the human spirit, once put into those situations, it adapts in a way that it would have never considered because that's just how like the elasticity of our brain works. Like as an extreme example, I think about Walking Dead.
yeah.
Half of them people, it's a show, but half of them people probably would have never thought that they could get to the point that they got to with surviving zombies because you don't know anything about zombies. But once you're in that situation, you got to do some crazy stuff to make it shake.
True.
So I feel like I think that's why so many people are so worried about like World War III because it's something that's beyond our control. And I remember a while back, I was reading or watching something that was saying like a lot of our media will reflect what our biggest fears are. And you see right now, a lot of things reflect stuff beyond our control, like alien invasions and viruses. And, COVID was a big example of that. Like, I feel like COVID showed people like true adversity could actually exist. And it's like whether or not you believe in the disease,
You
the
believe in
fact
the
of the matter,
situation that it put you in. Yeah.
you was in a situation. People were masked up. You couldn't go anywhere. Stuff was shut down. Couldn't catch a flight. Like it was
It
a
showed, yeah.
real
I think to your point,
challenge.
yeah, that was where a lot of people. It was one of the few things we seen where something impacted everybody, like everybody across the board.
Everybody, our food situations changed. There was chicken shortages, egg shortages, toilet paper shortages, and
Mhm.
I felt like people got more creative in their approaches to things than they would have ever realized. And so I feel like we don't have the ability yet, but I think the ability is naturally within us. It's just that we have to be put in those circumstances to see how how much we could actually deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a great point because I think like if every a world that is completely soft, like everybody's oversensitive and taking offense to everything, I think that's just as dangerous as like one where like everybody is completely like no empathy, like no care at all. Like it's what I'm saying. I think it's too
Right.
extreme, but I think it's like it's just as dangerous. And so like we definitely have to find kind of that line of where, because I don't like I think the problem that I always find with like the criticism of people being soft is that I think we have to have some degree of softness as human beings. Like to
Right.
live, like I think you have to have some degree of it. It's just finding that line to where, like to your point, I think the comment about, like our media representing our greatest fears is very truthful. And I think a lot of the talking points that we see It just is in terms of even where we see a lot of like social kind of um, discourse and political discourse is based upon like hyping up people's fears as well, or these fears that people play on. And a lot
Hmm.
of stuff that we see, I think, is based upon like people feeling like, oh, you're like this isn't being empathetic. This is being, like self-righteous or being hypocritical and stuff like that. And you're being soft,
Right.
just being kind of like overly about it. And it's important to kind of balance both soft and tough to be like human beings in the world going forward. Like I don't want people to listen to this and be like, oh well, yeah, yeah, you just got to be like completely heartless and cut shit out. But like
Hmm.
you do have to toughen up. You know what I mean? Like there is
Right.
a
I
certain
feel like
level.
it's a matter about being. You gotta recognize people's humanity. I think that's what it's about. Like empathy. Empathy is based on acknowledging someone's humanity and someone's differences without feeling like you have to encourage them to be like you. And
Yeah,
I think that's what's missing is like people feel like they can say whatever to whoever because of this idea that everyone should be like me. And it has never historically been the case. And I think part of the problem that created that was that we became so globalized that there's no distinction between cultures anymore. And then therefore everyone feels like I have to convert you to my way of thinking
yeah.
versus being able to say, like, I see your point. I might not agree with your point, but because you're a human that has feelings, I can let you have it. And we don't want to just let people have it anymore. And that's
Like
kind of a
we're
contradiction
definitely
to
in
me
a
because
debate culture. Like we're in a
exactly.
debate. We're in a point, a prove a point to win culture. Like nobody like listens. Like it's not like you have like I see like the show where like the people debate each other like, oh, 20 versus one and shit like that. Like people
Mm-hmm.
talk to make a point and then they talk to make a counterpoint, but nobody talks to listen to each other. Say, okay, me and you might come from two different viewpoints, but we're going to try to have, to listen to have to listen to come to some sort of understanding. Or I'm trying to listen to your viewpoint, or at least understand, who you are,
Right.
where you're coming from. Everybody just like, oh no. So if you don't think how I think, then you're stupid as hell. And like, back,
Exactly. And that's it. Is
yeah,
that no one everyone wants to win something. No one wants to learn anything. And that's the thing. I could uh, like
I
I
think
think
that's
about like
soft.
it's very soft because it's like you it comes from a place of fear
Yeah,
because this person doesn't isn't agreeing with you and coming to your point, then you feel like they're taking something from you.
to have to be shut. I have
And
to shut down and just say, oh well, no, I can't. Like you,
I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it no more because it
yeah.
means that I wasn't strong enough in my point. Which part of that becomes because we're weak in the sense that we don't have what we need behind us to either prove the point and make that person see our perspective, or we're not strong enough in our own conviction that even if that person doesn't agree, we still will stand on our laurels.
I think you
Like,
you hit the nail on the head, and I think a lot of people like I've been on this kick of watching these two young white guys who do these debate shows, like, and they
mm,
just like debate like all these like just random like MAGA people, like just random MAGA people.
oh, I know you're talking about where they
Like
sit
Dean
on the
Withers,
chairs
and
across from
Dean
each
Withers
other.
is one of them. Yeah, yeah. And like, and it's not like I'm like agreeing with like, oh, they're making them feel stupid. I think they kind of like, I don't think their point is to like really solve anything because I think they kind of lead into the same thing that the Republican or the right wing complain about, like, oh, you try to make people feel stupid and stuff like that. But like, it's funny to listen to them because a lot of times the people that call them up with these points to the exact point, like they don't have strong conviction in where they're standing,
Mm-hmm.
and the argument is uh, and I use MAGA not to make this a political concept. They're very fascinating. Like the mentality is very much kind of similar to what I'm describing, though. But
Right.
it's where this is based upon emotion and not a fact. And
Mm-hmm.
it's I feel this way. I don't like that you don't feel this way. And I would fuck you, fuck everything that you're saying. I don't give a shit. I'm right. I don't give a fuck if I'm wrong. I'm right. And if I'm wrong, fuck you because I don't need you anyway. Like, and to me, that's just a
Right.
very soft way of look of thinking.
Because it's they at some point know that they feel something, but they don't know how to address what it is that they feel, and they are afraid to admit that what they feel isn't like from inside coming outside. It's from something that you've been given. And part of the problem from the liberal standpoint is that they don't address those folks with that same level of empathy that they request, because it's like if obviously they're dealing with something, but if you approach them with the same hostility that they give you, then y'all are both dealing in the same propaganda in a
Right.
way. Versus if you recognize that they've been sold a false bill of goods just as much as you have, and then you approach it like from the same perspective of like we're both emotionally damaged trying to get a change in the world. But instead it's like you're a racist, so I'm not gonna listen to anything you say. But it's like that person might have feelings. That person is from an entirely different perspective than you. And they're not exposed to the same level of information that you might be. So because they're not, you can't treat them as ignorant because we don't all, even though it's the information age, we don't all process the same information.
Yep.
And like that's my problem with like academics in a way, not like obviously I have an education, but
Yeah,
like
but it comes from a sense of like how like I'm looking down on people, and that's what it's like. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
You
like you
ain't
don't.
read the
Yeah,
same books that I have. You don't have the same vocabulary. Therefore, like you what you say is kind of invalid, and like I have a big thing when it comes to like people getting caught up on the words that folks use as opposed to actually hearing their message. And I
yeah,
get that words matter, but when you focus on the words and not the intent and not what that person is trying to get across, then you miss the whole point. And that's why both of those sides of the aisles can't come together,
yeah,
because they might have said, make America great again, and you are upset, but y'all both are saying the same thing, which is like taxes are high and inflation is crazy. But like because they said MAGA, you're like, they don't matter. And then because you said fuck Donald Trump, they're like, you don't matter. And now no one's getting anywhere. And it's
yeah.
just we're just focused on the wrong things. And I feel like we are soft, but we also are being played to be soft because soft people don't push back.
True. I agree with that. And like to bring just some, I guess, to talk about some different examples of kind of this that we've seen. You talked about this a little bit, and I'm interested to know your thoughts on it. Like the comment section, and like the question I have, like when I say the comment section, like I think that is like I think if the internet had if you could define like the dark space of the internet, that would be it. Like the concept of like
Yeah.
the comment section on a video or the comment section on anything. It's just allowing anybody to say anything at any time for any reason. Like it's just always gonna be bad to me. But like, I guess the question I want to ask in terms of that is, are people overly cruel in comment sections, or do people just need to have thick skin and ignore what is said? Because I think we've seen examples of like people being like, oh, like, oh, they're in my comment section, they're talking so much about me, and it's like, well, then just don't read your comments. But at the same time, I mean, I understand why some people be like, hey, do you see what these people are saying or why they're impacted by that? Because some people really be going like
They go in.
in, like, or just the cruelest thing that you can say. So like I wonder, like, is it soft or is it like reactionary? Like,
And I hate the total line, but I honestly think it's both, right? Like I have been the person who was on Twitter saying the wildest things I could think of,
yeah,
because a lot of that comes from feeling, especially when you're younger, you feel like you either are unheard or you just got like some of the craziest stuff that you want to say and you want to feel validated by one saying it out loud, because even like the craziest thoughts feel better by saying them out loud. But two, you want to see if anyone else feels the same way. Because lots of times people have these crazy thoughts that they just want to get out, but they can't get out to the people around them. So they get them out online, and then it makes them, one, feel better because you have some level of release, but two, you also are getting feedback on that feeling so that you don't feel as um, crazy or isolated for thinking that way, right? So I feel like people are overly cruel to that degree because we have, again, we're exposed to so much that you have these thoughts and you're just like, I wonder if anyone else feels this way. So you just say it.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, that snowballs because the more you're able to say, the more you're going to try to say, right? But then two, I think that people read that type of stuff and are letting it phase them too much. You know, like there is a 50% element of the fact that these people don't have access to you. They could if they're like really technologically savvy, but these commenters don't really have the access to say to do the things that they say,
Yeah.
right? Therefore, at a certain point, you should ignore it. However, it's hard to ignore 2,000 death threats comments. You know what I'm saying? Like
No, yeah.
psychologically,
It's
that's
hard to
tough,
ignore that. Yeah. I think,
especially when like you have the people who, this is a lot of people's jobs and livelihoods. So
yeah.
if you're not online engaging in it, then you're not capitalizing on it. So it's like some people can't just cut it off because if you
Yeah.
just cut
That's
it
the
off,
space that you make money out of. You have to
that's
work in that space.
exactly. So if you got YouTube videos with 300,000 views and 2,000 comments, like you have to engage with it. Otherwise, you're not going to get any monetary value. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both. I feel like people need to recognize like this is not real life, but also people need to stop feeling comfortable saying whatever they feel like
I
on the
agree.
internet.
I
You know?
agree. And I think part of it is that people trolling will always get, I think, more attention than like congratulations. And not in like
Oh yeah,
a positive or a negative way, like, oh, I'm looking for somebody to troll me, but like if you post something and like somebody says congratulations, great job or anything like that, you might like it. You might, oh, yeah, and it'll make you feel good. And it's great. Like, but if somebody's like, oh, fuck you, you look fat as hell, you're ugly as shit, or something like that, then yeah, that's the one that you're going to look at and you're going to remember. Like, and everybody
right,
wants the person to be remembered, just because from a troller standpoint, to your point, they just love the fact that they had access to, like, they got that response.
right.
And I think but that brings me to, I guess, a different concept of my next question in terms, well, not next question, but just with the snowflakes. 'Cause I think snowflakes are certain, like we had that whole thing where they're like, oh yeah, you're a snowflake, you're offended by everything and stuff like that. And just my question in terms of that is, do you think that that's still a concept today? You think that's something that is phased out a little bit, or you think that was ever a thing? Because like I think the concept of like people being sensitive to everything around them, like I don't think people are as sensitive as they were like maybe a year or two ago. But I think we're still at that point where like there's still a lot of stuff you probably couldn't say or
Mhm.
do, and it will get, it would be an issue.
That's actually a really good question. Before I say that though, something that you said about the comments and engagement made me think about, how media highlights certain things, right? Because like you said, you could say congratulations on a post, and like the only person that might like it would be you. If you made a post about something that you succeeded in, and someone who respects you or follows you will be like, "Oh, good job," and then you like that, that's the end of that. But if a troll comes on there and says like, "Bitch, you ugly as hell," and like makes a really funny comment, that comment is going to get a lot of engagement from other people, and then it gets highlighted, and then you see that more than you see the congratulations. So I just wanted to kind of point that out because it's like that's what makes some of that stuff hard to
Yeah,
ignore because
it's a point of
engagement
engagement.
it's
Yeah,
important engagement, and the algorithm will just keep reminding you like, by the way, so and so called you ugly, and 2,000 people think it's funny, and so you just can't ignore it because then it's going to be on the top of your feed, right? So to segue from that into the snowflake thing, I think that because that has become so prevalent, that type of engagement has become so prevalent, I think it has made people not as soft. Like you don't get that snowflakeness, quote unquote, anymore because you realize that people will say crazy things and
Yeah.
therefore you got to let it go. And I think that snowflake became a thing because so everyone was trying to shield themselves from maliciousness and things just got more malicious.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was just a term that a certain demographic of people used to try to make these folks feel worse about themselves, but I don't think it's one of those insults that don't really stick. So therefore it doesn't really like
Yeah.
phase people and it kind of just goes away. Like I still think people are that level of sensitive, but I just think that the term went out of style because it's one of the things where it's just like corny people say corny stuff and it don't really catch on. It was like, you call somebody a snowflake, they don't really hurt their feelings.
And they're like,
Like
oh,
it,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, because you got to explain too much of it. So it's like, I feel like people did toughen up to an extent, at least with like knowing that people are going to be online crazy as all get out. But I don't think it's to the level of where they're not soft anymore, if that makes
No,
sense.
I feel you. And I think that the whole like concept of it's just a joke also kind of like was a battle back on that. Like, because people would say anything and be like, well, it's just a joke. Like, why are you taking it so serious? Like, or, like it's just a joke or it's just my opinion or something like that. And I think that also kind of made people kind of have to come out of that ultra kind of snowflake sensitivity because like people are to the point that you said people need to stop being so comfortable just saying what the fuck ever to who the fuck ever. And I
Right.
think that is just a joke thing is a definite example of that because I think people are very comfortable of saying just whatever, like in in the concept of just however disrespectful that they feel like they can get.
Right. And
And
I feel
yeah,
like those are the softest people too. The ones that they will
right,
say it's just a joke. They're the ones that can dish it but can't take it. And not everything is a joke to everybody.
right.
And I feel like yes, some things are just jokes, but you just never know what is sensitive to somebody or what somebody's going through. Like
Right.
that's the thing. Like we're saying that people are soft, but at the same time, a lot of folks are just keeping what they're going through to themselves. And all it takes is that one day where it might have been funny to them yesterday, but then they lights got cut off this morning,
Yeah, that shit
you
ain't
know,
funny now. Yeah.
and now it's not funny. It's like how when we were kids, folks used to like make comments about how like people from other countries smelled or whatever, right? And we're like, oh, ha ha, that's just a joke or whatever. But it's like then you get older and you're like, dang, they might not have had the resources that I had. So like I was just going in on someone who might not have understood me fully and maybe didn't have water at the crib. So it's like people are comfortable saying whatever, and the internet allows you to do that without having direct access to
Yeah.
somebody. And folks ain't been hit in the mouth enough for real.
I
Like
agree. Yeah, people
you
need to start
know,
getting punched in the face again. I agree.
just
Like
yeah,
just
because it's
straight up. Like
because like you know who you can say certain things to. We know who with our group that we can say whatever we want, and we also know what lines not to cross.
yeah,
But I'm not going to talk to y'all and then my coworkers the same way because I know when it's appropriate and when it's not. But people nowadays they feel like they can say whatever to whoever,
yeah.
and
No
there ain't gonna
consequence.
be no consequences. Exactly.
And like one thing I wanted to ask you about to kind of shift gears a little bit is in thinking about this concept of people being soft, one thing I think has always been an issue is that there's been like a fascination with like being a specialized class member.
Mm.
Like I think everybody wants to be I don't know how to say this correctly. Everybody wants to be associated with some sort of, I
You talking about
guess,
the struggle Olympics? I know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
of a marginalized class. Like I want to be known by my race of being a minority, or having some sort of disability, or having some sort of issue, whether it be like some sort of victimization or mental health or something. And I think that is also where everybody is looking to embrace what they see as the most marginalized or weakest parts of themselves. And I don't think race is a weak part of yourself, but if you embrace being, a particular minority just on the concept of I'm a minority and I'm this, this, what's what I'm looking for? This institutionalized or marginalized in society. And that's the only reason that I embrace this concept of being a minority. I think that's also a very similar concept of like, just that seems like a very soft way to look at yourself in the world, or just not to embrace your full self or try to be a strong human being, but just try to play to, oh, the world is against
Yeah,
me because the world is against me because I have mental health issues, and boom. Like, to just see the world as that and that alone. Like, I'm not like, to me that seems soft. It seems very lazy. I don't know if soft is the word, because I think soft and lazy, I interchange the two a lot. But it seems like a very
mm,
lazy way of looking at the world.
that's interesting. Soft. I'm gonna think about that soft and lazy point. But as far as like the classification part goes, when you first asked the question, I started thinking about like people again wanting to be acknowledged,
Yeah,
right? Like I think a lot of it has like less to do with feeling like there's some benefit for being a marginalized class, and it's more about people not feeling like part of a community anymore. And so, that's why people always like, oh, I feel seen now. It's like because you never really felt like you were part of a community. And I think a lot of that is like the handiwork of uh, society as a whole segmenting and making everyone feeling so individualized
yeah,
and isolated that because we're no longer like a community, everyone is just clamoring to be a part of some level of community, right? And it's kind of funny to me because Black people sort of put that in the forefront in the sense that because we were trying to get what we felt we were due, everyone then, and because we're also like the most copied group historically as far as like cultural things that become very popular across the world, by default, even the struggle became copied,
yeah.
and again, it's because people want to feel cool. Even if it's you want to feel cool for being disadvantaged in some level,
That
and it's
became
like
cool. Yeah.
it became cool because it's like people felt like Black people were doing that to be cool. And it's like, no, we dealt with slavery. Therefore, we want these things.
Made the struggle
And
look too cool.
and
Marvin Gaye sung the song too well,
is he sung it way too well. And now everybody want to know what's happening, brother.
Yeah,
Like and it's wild because then capitalism is good for taking a segment of something and making it popular in order to take away the value of it. And I feel like being part of a specialized class is a way of preventing what would have been like Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition. You know what I'm saying? Like if people were to come together, no matter what their marginalization is,
yeah,
then none of that would really matter because we're all supporting each other. But instead, we're being segmented in order to prevent us all from recognizing the commonalities between each other. And it's kind of wild because then it makes people feel like you have to have these things, and it's like, it's weird, right? Because then it's like, it's almost like blaming Black people for saying like, because we demanded reparation, now everyone feels like they deserve some level of compensation for the disenfranchisement that they've received. right? And that's a weird way to look at it because what ends up happening, especially historically as Black people, then we kind of become bottom of the totem pole again. It's like we want money for X, Y, and Z, but now you got ADA laws, which people do need that. It's not to say that they don't need that, but it's like ADA laws came first. DEI existed for a certain segment of folks. Affirmative action got more white women jobs than anybody. So it's like by asking for all of these things, we created everyone a line. We formed a line for people to receive some level of compensation, and then we just kept getting fronted in line about it. And now everyone is fascinated with that because they felt like it felt like some level of progress, even though technically it wasn't really any progress.
I agree with you on that. And like, I think it's interesting because like I'm gonna move on from this point, but it's interesting because I think the especially with like Black women, I think Black women when it became a big emphasis on Black women expressing like, hey, these are the issues that we go through in society as African American and as women, and they're disadvantaged in both of those ways. I think that was as other movements were. I think that was a large starting point for especially like white women and stuff to be like, but hey, we're disadvantaged too. And then it became to your point where it's like, hey, but we have our class and then we're doing this, and then it became to back to your point of like a shuffling back down the totem pole of who gets the number one gold in this particular struggle Olympics first, and then yeah. So I get your point in that, and
Right. It's like I always felt like if we keep making categories of things in order to feel like we will get a moral benefit from it from a society that doesn't necessarily look out for us, then we are giving them tools in which to keep us segmented. I mean, and I've
yeah,
just always been fascinated with that because it's almost like saying, "Don't ask for nothing." you know?
don't ask for nothing and nobody else. If you ask for something, then we gonna ask for something new. You know what I'm saying? Like yeah,
And then you don't get it, but they gonna get it.
exactly. And like one thing that I've also think in terms of this soft thing, right? Because we talked about people complaining about like everyday life issues as if it's like world ending and not being able to handle like everyday life problems.
Mm-hmm.
And like one thing that I've seen as example of this, I talk a lot about incels, and I'm not gonna talk about incels for the reason that I think of right now. But like this is a group of men that have, for the most part, chosen to retract from society, just like give up. And like I bring that up because like they give up on the reason of like, oh, I don't think women want me, or they don't agree with my way of life, or people think the way that people think I need to change, or I need, there's a problem with my masculinity, or they tell me that things I like aren't the right things to like, so I just don't want to deal with this anymore. And I think we're seeing more people in different areas, not just that particular society, but have similar thoughts of like they're just giving up, and like they're just like everybody. I mean, I don't think it always looks the same, but there are people that are just like literally just like, oh, what's the point of working? Fuck it. What's the point of doing this? Fuck it. Like nothing matters. Like we're just gonna like die either way, or everything it costs too much, or the world is too hard. So I'm just
Like it's
giving up.
about hard work again, bro.
Yeah, like, and I think that is a huge issue and a huge reflection of like are we saw, because it's like it's a growing number of people just giving up on life, like just giving up on like just progressing in life in any way, shape, or form. Like nothing matters. And I see this a lot in the younger generation where they have like it's a certain apathy. It's like a certain like, I don't really know, nothing really matters. Like,
It's again, it's about that lack of exposure to adversity, right? Like I remember I was watching a video talking about incel when I first heard what the term was, and this guy made this point that what that is a symptom of people who have like too much access to pornography, and it makes you feel like it makes you feel like this should just be instant. It's like
instant gratification.
it's instant gratification, but it's also like the narrative that gets pushed in that kind of media, right? Like if you spend 3 hours a day for 7 days a week, watching videos where they kind of falsify how that process works, then when you go out into the real world,
Yeah,
the
that's what you
thing that
think.
you that's what you think is how it goes. You think that you should just be a pizza boy that whips it out and all of a sudden you're good to go. And then when it don't work, and you get called a creep and now you feel wrong in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's like it's too much of an exposure situation and not being taught how the game works, because everything is a game. Everything is a matter of learning how to play the game. And despite the fact that most of them people are gamers, they don't see it as something that has like that deserves a challenge. And part of that could be because we're also in an age where like you can cheat that game. You can go find cheat codes and
Yeah,
you feel like everything has a cheat code, everything has a secret strategy that'll just shoot you to the top. Like everything is about like expediency and convenient. And I just think that folks just are too comfortable feeling like they don't have to work for anything.
yeah,
And
I
you know,
agree.
I was actually chatting with my mom about a similar topic, because I used to always give her a hard time for how much work she used to make me do. And I remember like seeing other people, friends or family or whatever, who they didn't have to do the amount of work that I did, in the sense of like, it was being an only child, single mom. It's like I'm mowing the grass, I'm washing the dishes, I'm cleaning the bath, I'm doing every single chore in the house. I'm looking at her like, and yes, you work and you help a brother out a little bit, but then I got older and I'm like, I'm thankful because I recognize how to approach a challenge
Yeah,
versus people who, like this generation nowadays is not given that many things to do, because you got robots that'll do the vacuum and take out the trash. And we used to like it used to be a running thing that black folks never use a dishwasher. And now everyone's like, well, I'm not gonna give my kid the same experience that I had, but now your kid don't know how to wash dishes. And they just stay, what I'm saying? They don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to cook. They don't know
the
how to
kids
farm
17 years old, but they can't stay home by themselves, but they don't know how to take care of themselves.
because they don't, they starving to death because they think that the pizza just shows up by itself. And it's just like I think we're so detached from the real world. And I don't, this might be random. This made me think about this, but I was watching this video. This farmer was um pulling up all of his potatoes, right? And he had these potatoes in this big machine and it's rolling them around, and these potatoes are covered in dirt. He's hosing these potatoes down. And so many people commented on this video because they're dirty potatoes and he's washing them off and they start like glowing bright red. And everyone's commenting on these videos about, oh, see, they're painting the potatoes. Everything is fake, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he is like we talk about comments and stuff. He's engaging with these comments and he realizes that like majority of these people don't know that potatoes grow in the ground and that they're dirty. And so they're just thinking that he's painting these potatoes. And he was like, it blew his mind because he's like, he didn't realize how detached from the world people actually are. Like if you ask a kid nowadays
Yeah, they have no
where
idea.
food comes from, they'd be
They're
like,
gonna
well,
say the
bananas
grocery
come from the
store.
store.
Yeah,
Exactly. They ain't never seen
they
a
don't know.
banana on the tree.
Yeah, they
You know
don't
what I'm
know.
saying? And it's crazy. So it's like that's why these kids are so apathetic. It's because they literally don't know anything. And not in a generic sense of like children, but like they literally don't
Don't
know
know. Yeah,
everything.
they don't know, and you can't criticize for stuff they don't know. It's on us to teach them that they don't, but they don't know. They don't have exposure to it, like you're saying. Like they don't know. And like I think like to we've talked about most of the concerns that I have about this for the most part. I think one thing just to go through real quick is I think you mentioned that we've grown comfortable with like excuses and accepting mediocrity and accepting quitting. And I think that's the one of the biggest concerns I have about this culture and like it being soft is that just we've grown so comfortable with that. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
grown accepting of it. Like, yes, you can quit, it's fine. And yeah, you can give up, it's great. And no problem, don't stress yourself. And like to a degree, yes. Like you want to be like the world won't fall, but like you have to see things through. And like I think that's just, one of the things that we have to kind of come to. And I think pretty much the reason I say it is because, like, as we both kind of spoken about, like, the truly evil parts of our culture prey on the weak. Like, they prey on
Right.
weak people. And I think, if in order for us to succeed, we can't be in that mindset. We can't make ourselves pretty much sheep for the slaughter, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, just to kind of conclude, because I know you got to go. Like, just to kind of conclude, um, I think we talked about being soft, and I think it's not the concept of being soft really is one that kind of I think it started. I don't think it started on the internet, but I think the internet popularized it. And I think, it's really kind of, it's one of the weird things, but we've seen something start on the internet and really kind of make its way into real life. And like, I think, it's for the most part, the soft era was kind of like an over exaggerated response to like how people believed how rigid the older generation was, or just how like, just like how, I say rigid, just how like not, I don't want to say not caring, but just I feel like we feel like we're softer because we try to like overcorrect for what we feel like older generations didn't do.
Right. I think
And
that's a very valid observation. But continue. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I'm just
Like,
saying, like, I was because when you said that, it made me think about a point I heard. Well, a point I was thinking about earlier, which was that it's almost like it's almost like niggas that made out the hood, right? Like you make it out the hood, you became a rapper, hooper, whatever, right? And you get all this money, and then you feel like you want to shield your offspring from the things that you've experienced. But in doing so, they don't have the same drive that you did.
yeah,
It's like they don't have that hunger. And it's kind of like a catch 22 because it's like on one hand, yes, you're giving them all the things
that
that
you
you
never
didn't
had,
have,
but you're not giving them all the things that you got.
that you got, that made you who you are, that made
Yeah,
you think the way that you think. And then that's why these kids just are just so used to that. And it's
yeah.
it's it's crazy because it's like it's one of those things where it's going to happen like that either way. And like to the point that you were saying about like the world around you and everything. My dad used to always say, you can try to avoid the adversity all you want to, but at a certain point, it's gonna catch up with you, and then you can't avoid it. So it's like we can be as soft as we want, but the problem is that the softer that we get,
It's
the
going to catch
worse
up. Yeah,
the
you
worse the
have to catch
pendulum's gonna swing back.
up. I agree. I agree with you, bro. And like, I think that to conclude it, like if I had to end this on one statement, like it would be like I think what we've seen in the concept of a general historical sense is that history has always been written and dictated by the strong.
Right.
Like it's written and dictated by the strong and it's criticized by the weak. And I think, in that concept, we have to decide like what like who are we in this concept? Like, are we the ones writing it or are we the ones criticizing
Mm. I like that point because then it's almost like happening in real time. Like if we're criticizing in real time the things that are happening, then it kind of shows our weakness. And I was like, that's my big pet peeve right now with like things politically. Is everyone wants to criticize, but y'all are not the ones that's writing history. And the ones that's writing history, they might let you complain, but they moving on to the next thing. So you can keep complaining all you want to, but complaining ain't really getting us nowhere.
the biggest is yeah to your point wrap it up, but to your point, yeah, the internet, I see so many people with very educated or very drawn out opinions, sometimes on very smart things, sometimes on very stupid things, but I agree with you all the time. It's like, okay, and what? Like you can talk for 3 minutes about, oh, and this is what's wrong with this particular person or this, and they need to do this, or if I was in their position I would do this, and blah 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 blah, but what power did you actually have?
Right.
And if not, then you're just complaining for 3 minutes on a video every day. You just sound really smart while you're doing it. Like, does that make it any better?
It's don't, and it's crazy because it's like when you intellectualize everything, then you then feel like you accomplished something,
Yeah.
and that's that's what makes it soft because you then your brain has that dopamine fix of like, well, I've talked through it, so therefore it's gone somewhere. But then you go back to just sitting on the couch eating chips or whatever, right? Like it's I had a point and I lost it, but it's you can't always just think on the hypothetical. You actually have to go do the thing. And that's like, if I had to end on a point, it's like my biggest thing that I want people to stop doing is to start talking about how things would have been if something else had happened, because that's living in the past and that's not solving the problem. That's solved. There's a certain point of like, yes, we could do X, Y, and Z to change this in the future. But if you're like, man, if we was never slaves, we would have been,
Yeah.
swimming in gold in Africa. Like, okay,
They're
like
like,
that's
yeah, like,
cool.
and what? Like, okay, like,
All
oh, get
right.
you, like, yeah, okay, like, well, yeah, we was kings, but we not now, bro. So
We
what?
not
Like,
now. Now we still enslaved, trying to get free. So what?
yeah, yeah, bro. I appreciate, I agree with that 100%, man. And like, wish we had this conversation for longer, but I appreciate your time. Um,
Man, this is dope. This is
yeah,
real, real dope. We got to do it again.
yeah,
I'm
definitely
honestly
have you back
glad
on the podcast.
for sure, man. I'm glad we only kept it at an hour because I thought we could do this for three.
Yeah, bro, we could go on for a long time. We could, bro. So,
Yeah, man.
just like I said, man, I appreciate you. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. This is Maybe I'm Just Not Getting It podcast. Again, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Um, Let me see. Anything? Yeah. Follow me,
Oh,
Instagram, Facebook. And any last words?
man, people are soft, but maybe I'm just not.
I couldn't agree more, bro. I agree, bro. Well, appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'll see you on the next episode. Yeah.
Peace.